Okay, so we're going to get kick-started this webinar today. It is the 26th of January, 2023. I'm delighted to bring to you a fantastic webinar today. The webinar title is Ethical AI for School Safety, and we've got three distinguished guests today. So first of all, it's David Barano. David has a distinguished background, which includes being San Diego Police Department's 34th Chief of Police, and he was also on Chula Vista's Elementary Schools District Board of Education. So David, if you'd just like to give the audience a little bit about your background, and it's great to have you here today.
Well, thank you, and good morning to all. As Daniel mentioned, I'm a former Chief of Police for the San Diego Police Department, the Chula Vista Police Department, and also served as a U.S. Marshal for the Southern District of California. Combined about 35 years of law enforcement experience. During my tenure in San Diego, I really focused, one of my priorities was on reducing juvenile-related crime, focusing on juvenile prevention, intervention, and also expanding our school task force program within the schools. In the city of Chula Vista, again, I served on the Board of Education. Chula Vista Elementary School District is the largest K through 6th grade district in the state. And so I became very familiar with the details, the complexity of budgeting, security, open campuses, trying to balance open campuses while maintaining the security of schools. So, and obviously as a chief, I think that's the number one concern you have in light of all the mass shootings that we continue to see every day, is keeping our schools safe, yet allowing vendors, employees, children to go back and forth each and every day.
Thank you for that, David. Our next speaker is Ryan Love, who's got 30 years experience in law enforcement security, including working with the San Diego County Sheriff's Office and District Attorney's Office. So Ryan, great to have you here today.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for everyone that's attending. As mentioned, my name is Ryan Love. I have previous career in law enforcement. I spent 18 years with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department, worked a lot of different assignments from jails, patrol. I was a school resource officer at one time. I worked detectives, narcotics. I finished out my career with the Sheriff's Department at the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA Narcotic Task Force. And then I went over to the District Attorney's Office as a criminal investigator, where I served on the gang prosecution unit, and then ended my career in 2017, assigned to the San Diego Human Trafficking Task Force. I currently serve as the Coordinator of Safety and Security for the Cajon Valley Union School District here in El Cajon, California. My role essentially is to work very closely with our school administrators and to reduce crime, violence, and any disruptive behaviors on our school campuses. I liaison very closely with local law enforcement to make sure that we are serving our community. We don't call dispatch if we have something going out in the community to find out what's going on. I have all the watch commanders information, so I'll call them directly to see if our schools need to go into a secure campus or any type of lockdown protocol. And so, again, I'm happy to be here and glad to be a part of this conversation.
Yeah, thank you, Ryan. And then our last speaker today is Guy Grace, who is a subject matter expert in campus school safety. Previously, he's won National Campus School Safety Officer of the Year. So, Guy, if you'd just like to elaborate and introduce yourself to the audience.
So thank you. It's an honor to be here. I started in security and on safety and law enforcement back in 1985. First thing I did was nuclear security, nuclear, biological, chemical weapon security. So when I got out of the service, I started in K through 12 safety and security immediately. It became in Colorado for a private security firm, supervising all their after school activities programs such as stadium events and dances and sporting events and things, and was the supervisor of that for a year and a half. Then I ended up going into taking a position with a school district in Littleton, Colorado, and worked as a security director for 31 years there, and retired there in 2020, And now what I do is I'm a school safety advocate. I'm the chairman of the advisory committee for the Partner Alliance for Safer Schools. I do a lot of volunteer work for National Sheriff's Association, but I also do, I take paid work. I do consulting, for example, big case with the the lawsuit from 290 school districts towards the jewel industry was one of my recent projects. I put together the safety and security technology for that to mitigate vaping in the schools. The other things doing now is just basically advocating for folks like Ryan and David. You know, how do we get funding? How do we get materials? How do we get information to help them in their endeavors? You know, when I started in the 80s, we had, you know, school safety was a lot different back then. You know, we had the concerns, okay, but you know, things were, it was a lot different. Now, you know, it's really nice to see as a, you know, a retired school security director, just that it continues to evolve, and in a good way, mostly in a good way. And that's very good, because, you know, every day we look at what we have in our schools. You know, we have 55 million students in our schools every day. We have probably another 55 million guests and others who are stepping into the schools every day. So when you think about it, you know, Ryan and David, you know, these folks have a lot to do every day. And it's not just school shootings, it's thousands of other different types of situations and events that can take place in a school. What takes place in a community can take place in a school. You know, it's just a school district is a microcosm of the community where it resides in.
Yeah,
So thank you.
thank you for that, Guy. And just to let you know that we will be answering some questions towards the end as well. And just to kickstart the webinar, really, I'm going to turn to you, David, to begin with. With all your experience in 2023 now, obviously we've seen, it seems as now that we live in a day and age where we get information instantaneously, the world gets to see, obviously, the issues, what go on in schools across the United States. So in your opinion, in 2023, where are we in school safety and campus safety in particular?
Well, there's no doubt that we have come a long ways over the last many years with the digital information, the immediate notifications, alert, etc. But I believe that there's a lot more that can be done. As Guy mentioned, for example, the Chula Vista Elementary School District, about 30,000 students. Then you multiply that, but as Guy mentioned, if I could double that as far as visitors, vendors, and teachers, employees, in and out of campuses. And the challenge is that we in law enforcement, the school districts, one of the nationwide issues or challenge for law enforcement is recruitment and retention. And so in the city of Chula Vista and San Diego, many school districts, there's been a reduction actually in the number of law enforcement personnel on campuses. Just simply, there's not enough staffing for black and white cars to handle those 911 calls. So unfortunately, in schools, in many cases, there's been a reduction in the number of officers actually assigned to schools. And obviously there's security at schools, probably not enough security. So that's where really I see the opportunity that needs to be embraced, is the use of this advanced technology that can provide an alert, a notification, a lockdown before that 911 call is made, before anybody calls in, to really take advantage of this advanced technology. Again, and taking a look at budgets, I know that every year, I was on the board of education for 8 years in Chula Vista. Every year we had a reduction. That cycle of the budgeting, as you know, they're funded by the state schools, and simply we were always looking at actually reductions in staff. And unfortunately, security should have been a priority, but there was always a reduction in security. So how do you replace all the additional security personnel that we need, all the additional security measures? And that's by being smarter, taking advantage of this technology where you don't need 10, 15 people to be monitoring cameras and missing something. Again, with the use of this AI technology, you're replacing a lot of personnel. You multiply that by salaries and benefits and pensions, the more secure a campus can be, Without a campus looking like a fortress, we really have to embrace and do a lot more on the advanced technology side. That's going to save lives. As we've seen in these mass shootings, every second, every minute, you're losing lives with the type of assault weapons, the amount of ammunition. This immediate notification is critical in saving lives. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and if I could just add to that, because you make a very excellent point, Chief, and then working now at a school district, being former law enforcement, the things that we responded to when I was in law enforcement, because of those shortages and because of those cutbacks, they're not necessarily responding to the lower level incidents that are happening for school districts. Typically, as we know here in the United States and California, our schools are fundamentally public access. So anybody can walk onto a campus at any time. And so the ability to be able to have a live view and the life of that campus is so critical, not only when something is happening and there's a threat on campus, but also the ability to be able to provide that information to responding first responders for a successful outcome, and to make sure that they know what's going on before they get there, and then make sure that they're able to make sure that everyone is marked safe during an incident. I think it's so critical.
Yeah, and would you like to just touch on that, Guy? Like, where do you see in 2023 right now, school safety and so forth?
Well, I look at it as we're not at a crossroads of school safety technology. Has really changed when school districts and the industry adopted the power over Ethernet infrastructure. So we look at K through 12 schools in the fact that one of the things I would say, we look at like the E-rate program. Mr. Love, are you familiar with that, David? The E-rate program, how many of our school districts, we fund the PoE, their power over Ethernet infrastructure, for us to run devices and do e-learning and things in our schools. Well, we look at that when we look at K through 12 schools, they have been highly evolved because they have been receiving, at the bare minimum, 40% of their infrastructure for the E-rate program is funded by that at the bare minimum. And it's based on your poverty rate, your free and reduced lunch rate in your school district. So when we look at that, a lot of school districts have received the benefit of that, but and maybe of being able to fund that infrastructure. Obviously, you can't buy security technology with it, but you can put security technology onto that infrastructure. So when I look at that, the evolution of K through 12, it continues, and we continue to learn from the other 19 or 20 so sectors that we have in our nation of safety and security. But that evolution is continuing. But when we look at in a school, like I said in my first part of speaking, was, the things that we deal with, or what school districts deal with, is, thank God, school shootings are rare and not likely to happen in the sense of an everyday occurrence in every school district, but it's something they need to be prepared for. But when we look at like drugs, we look at like bullying, we look at trespassing, and we look at all those different things, we need to be in K through 12 in 2023. It's a multi-hazard response. So a lot of the technologies that we are putting in here in K through 12, we're looking at perimeter security or layered security. We look at the perimeter layer, we look at the parking lot layer, we look at the exterior layer of the school, we look at the interior layer of the classrooms, and all of those things have different life safety component needs. But we look at it in the same way in K through 12, is deploying our technology in a multi-hazard way. So a lot of the technology that we see is designed to work on different types of threats that may arise in the school districts and things. So multi-hazard, so looking at the different layers. So 2023, where we are is, yeah, we got to be worried about a school shooting, but we also have to be worried about many other things. We look at school suicide, for example, the mental health. Like, guarantee you, Mr. Love is constantly working with his mental health practitioners in his school district to ensure that they are taking a holistic approach to basically meeting the mental health needs of their students. And I will also say too, if we don't do this right in safety and security, we turn our schools into prisons. When we say we have a lot of people who have walked away from the security profession, well, we're seeing that in the teacher profession. We're seeing that in the parapros. We're seeing that in others. And why is that? Well, we had COVID. We had, we have school shootings, and a lot of people sit in there and work, and they go, God, there's a lot of fear created. And the best thing that folks like Mr. Love and Bajaro and myself that we could do is try to foster an environment that empowers those staff and those students not to be worried about harm coming to them every day. It's kind of like what we do. If we do it wrong, we'll direct people to fear. If we do it right, it will direct people to hope. And that's what we need to be focused on, is enabling them, the teachers to teach and the students to learn. But also another thing that a lot of people don't realize, how much we count on K through 12 schools as civilians out there, or moms and dads, to take care of our kids, and how much of that correspondence, if that school is safe, my schools are safe, well, your community is going to be a lot more performing a lot better. And those are things that Mr. Love and David do every day. What they do is they do it holistically as possible, and it has a great benefit on the community as a whole. Just the whole big picture, that how important schools are.
Yeah, I think you wanted to mention.
I could add, a guy mentioned again, that obviously we're always concerned and preparing for that worst case scenario of mass shootings, but an excellent point is there's a lot more going on in schools that we should be capturing. In San Diego County, for example, the San Diego County Board of Supervisors are providing funding so that every middle school student gets a mental screening evaluation. There's a lot of data out there regarding the mental health of middle school kids going into high school, the suicide, the digital influence, the bullying, etc. Those incidents or actions could be captured again with the use of cameras. Also, my experience has shown here in San Diego County with some of the major school districts, and probably applies to most, they simply don't have enough cameras for the coverage that they actually need. And the cameras are antiquated. And again, they're not being monitored like they should be. When you take a look at budgets, as I mentioned, obviously the bulk of that, and it has to, goes to teachers and materials and staff that operate the school. It's simply not enough on the technology side for security. Probably the most likely incident where it can turn really bad and be life-threatening almost every single day in most schools is there's a lot of stay-away orders, restraining orders out involving either divorced parents, boyfriend, girlfriend, where they created some illegal activity on the campus, or there's concern they might come back and assault or create a crime on campus. These people are driving into parking lots of schools, they're walking into the lobby of administrative buildings on campus, and nobody knows that these individuals have a court order where they're not allowed to be on campus. They might be carrying a weapon. All that can be immediately stopped, identified with the use of this advanced technology. But that is occurring almost every day in our schools.
No, you all three of you, when you were talking, obviously all three of you mentioned technology, and I just want to circle back to you, David, before I turn to Ryan and Guy. Is that obviously throughout all your experience, how has the use of technology impacted policing? Because as we've seen technology kind of go like this over the years, it seems the introduction of AI is going to make it spike like in a way that we're not used to. And so I think one thing that people need to understand is that AI is not there to replace somebody and make decisions. It's there to enhance you and be able to enhance your decision making. So throughout your career, David, and where you are today, how has the technology impacted the policing, and where do you see it going? Because right now, I think a lot of people are a little bit intimidated by the technology, especially even when you mention the word AI, it can be intimidating, although it's quite simple. So I'm just interested to know about your background and in terms of how has the use of technology impacted policing?
Without a doubt, it's been a major impact, I would say, especially here in the last 10 years. And I believe you see the agencies that are the most successful, that really maximize the number of personnel they have, is the use of technology. Sometimes law enforcement in some areas are a little bit slower to adopt that technology, or they just simply don't have the funding. When I go back to my tenure in the city of Chula Vista, we were one of the first ones to move forward with the body-worn cameras. So a lot of folks want to stay away with that advanced technology, where every incident is going to be videotaped. It protects the officer, it protects the citizen, it enhances the relationship. And we saw by the use of this technology that in my 30 years never thought we would have a camera in every officer, really reduce complaints, reduce assaults on officers, so officer safety, and really enhance prosecution. It's on video. You can't change that. We also started the pilot program, the drone program, and now the city of Chula Vista has taken it to another level. There's international law enforcement agencies that are coming to Chula Vista, or Chula Vista representatives are going out of the country, the drone program. They are the first responders now in a 911 call. I know there was an incident, a number of incidents. So for example, where a drone responded to a report of a person with what appeared to be a gun on a bus bench or some location. The drone gets there first and is providing critical intelligence information to dispatch to the officers responding. And it turns out the individual did not have a gun. But again, it saves lives, it enhances officer safety, and it provides a lot more accurate information before the officers get there. You know, the new 911 system, but you see the departments that are the most successful and those that are understaffed embracing technology works. In law enforcement, to be candid with you, here in Southern California, a lot of times when you mention the AI part of it, the artificial intelligence, you know, kind of scares maybe law enforcement really has to embrace technology. It raises some questions by the community regarding the invasion of privacy, but there's enough checks and balances there where that can be addressed when you properly inform the community through pilot programs, to educate the community. Again, it's just simply a helpful tool to provide that immediate information to law enforcement, to dispatch centers, to school districts, whoever's using that technology, that they can respond safer and faster and more effective. But obviously, you know, technology is, so we simply don't have enough cops. We don't have the personnel to be watching cameras. Technology has worked, and the agencies and government entities that have really embraced it.
I mean, that's a great point in terms of you've all mentioned staff shortages as well, and obviously, Guy, you've experienced this through the years, and David, so have you. But Ryan, it seems like you're living this day to day in terms of staff shortages. So, how do you think that technology could possibly assist you with staff shortages, but also improve the security?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm constantly being asked every single day to do more to protect our kids. Every time you hear of a national event, it always comes back to how can we better protect our kids? The expectations to do better are increasing for not only security folks, but for law enforcement. We've got to be able to come up with a solution that can protect our kids. I'm a father. I would hate for something to happen and not have the ability, if there's something that can help keep our kids safe. It's, to me, the AI solution, when we're talking here, it's a game changer. High visibility, it's easily manageable. It doesn't require a whole lot of connections, a whole lot of, you don't have to worry about training, implementation, onboarding. That right there is so key for the security folks to be able to enhance security with less folks. Security folks should be at our schools. We should be building relationships with kids. That's where most of our time should be spent. Not looking at a camera. I have 27 school sites in my school district. I don't have 27 security folks that can sit there in front of a camera and watch and see what's going on. But if you say that I can go out and I can build relationships with kids and have the ability to be alerted when there is a large gathering, a potential fight, a potential weapon on campus, and to be able to be alerted to that in real time and to be able to provide that information to law enforcement. Look, we want there to be safe outcomes, okay? And so for law enforcement to be able to have that technology, when we can provide that to them, it keeps them safe. And again, it keeps everybody in the community safe. I responded to the Santana High School shooting in 2001. We went in there blindly. We didn't know what to expect other than what the deputies that were giving us information. The perpetrator was in the restroom. We sit outside that restroom for I don't know how long before we could even make entry after someone had already been shot. So the ability to know where the person is, the perpetrator is, to know how many there are, what they're wearing, and then to be able to have a lifeline of where that person went, where they were and left, what vehicle they got into, and to be able to provide that information to law enforcement, like Chief Bejarano indicated, it's so critical for the not only the successful outcome to keep everybody safe, but also for litigation and prosecution as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you brought so many case studies up there, and it's a shout out right now to Anti-Human Trafficking Intelligence Initiative, because they're also trying to provide schools around the country with non-compliant sex offender databases in terms of for each state. And that's obviously an issue in itself. And it seems like there's endless issues and endless potential nefarious threats for schools. And so I want to circle you in, guys, so you might elaborate on in terms of what David and Ryan has said. But one of the biggest drawbacks with obviously technology is getting the funding for schools. And I know that's one of the things that obviously you've worked with and worked against for so many years. So if you'd like to just elaborate on what Ryan and David has just said, but then also focus a little bit on the funding. How do they get that for the systems?
Well, I'd like to say that one of the things I realized from my career was empowering staff at the school, such as, like a secretary, a principal, an administrator, somebody that's working in those schools that, because every school has somebody that's devoted to access control, making sure that, parents and guests that are coming into the school, they're the ones that are being cleared to that front door are okay. So when we look at AI, and we look at AI, a lot of what we do is a force multiplier. Okay, when we look at AI, AI is something that can be used for an active threat situation, or i.e. an active shooter situation, but AI can be used for different, a lot of different things. Like one of the biggest, as an early adopter of AI in 2006, for example, the ability to have a pan tilt zoom camera correspond with the opening of a door on the outside of a school. That was, the basic AI. We look at AI is built in every video management system in some way, with motion detection, with different, just different types of things that are built into our VMS systems. But when we look at what AI is doing, it's fostering and it's enabling, like it said, addressing multiple threats. One of the questions that is often asked is, what is going on with visitor management and monitoring in schools? Well, for example, AI is very critical to that, and we're starting to see a lot of the industry start to address the visitor management and student accountability programs with AI. For example, crowd gathering. If we have a fight that's going on that could potentially be going on in a cafeteria or outside the school, AI could be set up to identify hey, there's 5 or 6 people that are gathering out there that can alert somebody to, hey, there's gathering. Okay, let's get to that camera. Well, it's innocent, all right. Or if there's fist throwing or there's a drug deal, AI can be used for that. But the problem that we have that we need to be cognitive of in K through 12 is deploying AI in an incorrect way. We have a lot of pushback from states on, for example, facial recognition and things. And facial recognition is an AI, all right? But what has happened is some school districts and organizations did not deploy it correctly, did not well think out the human roles and processes of how they were going to use AI. For example, using facial recognition, I used facial recognition up to my retirement in the last 4 years of that. But what we did, it was, you know, for example, if you were a threatening person or on a threat assessment, we determined you to be a threat, we would write you a letter and tell you your system was in our AI system now. Okay, your face. Okay, you show up. We have things and measures that can detect that, you know, you've been identified as a threat, you know, and you can talk to us about this. But those are ways that we did it, not going and looking at every minority child or minority student that walked in our door. It's about, you had to be a threat. Okay, minorities, you know, that's the problem, is a lot of people misuse that. Okay, misuse that facial recognition, and it victimized people of color, all right, in some ways. So we have to be cognitive of that. When we do this and we deploy these technologies, we have to be very careful, and we have to do it in a proactive and holistic way. If we do not do that, we can really mess up our chances to put those technologies in place. So going to funding, when we look at funding right now, a lot of people, you know, funding is all, everybody always assumes who doesn't work in a school district. I'm sure Ryan and David could tell you that, hey, just apply for a grant. Well, we all know that grants, those have been doing this a long time, grants aren't not something that just pop out of the rain cloud. They're things that they're competitive, you have to apply for them, and you're not necessarily going to get them. So a lot of what we look at, what school districts do for funding is, you know, if they are not successful with grants, is bond initiatives. You know, bond initiatives are probably the biggest way that school districts fund safety and security improvements in their school districts. And the other one is,
if they pass.
What was that?
I said if they pass. I know people a lot of times they count on those bonds, and they have all these items that they have a line that they're gonna go out and buy, and then it doesn't pass, and then you're left with ground zero. So sorry to interrupt.
Well, I would say that to you, but as a school security director, in my past, and again, what we found that safety and security would actually sell the other areas of the bond. So maybe I would challenge people to look at, because most parents and guardians are looking at, oh man, I can't put my kid in that school or go to school, or my loved one working in the schools. And I think that what happens is, what we realized in Colorado is, I had 6 bonds in my career, and every one of them passed. But what we found, especially as security technology evolved in the early 2000s, we were able to sell the bonds based on school safety and security, and sell those other projects in the bond packages, because the top number 1, 2, and 3, safety and security, was always in that top factor. Maybe that's because of Columbine. Maybe that's because of the Aurora shooting. Maybe that's because of Arapahoe or Sedalia, all the countless things going on in Colorado. But we did find that the safety and security could see that. Now, we all know that there's aminosity towards law enforcement in some cases, in some communities, being in schools or being out in the communities and things. And that's something that's changed over the years, but what Ryan, I think what we see a lot at school districts, or in mine, was the private security that works directly for the school board at that school district, so to say.
Is
So,
that,
and it
just,
has been
just to
more
pull, just to
acceptable.
pull Ryan in there, is this part of like what you're seeing, and exactly what Guy is seeing right now?
I'm
With the
seeing that in a lot of schools. There are a lot of school districts that have like private security, and they have they have a partnership with law enforcement, or there's not law enforcement, there's private security in the schools, and it's just all over the place. And it's a challenge. I'm for me, law enforcement and school safety professionals in schools. Okay, you can't do without each other. They have to work together and things. So that's the problem, I would say, in schools that I've seen, is siloization. Okay, silos like learning services, special education, school safety, athletics, those things, there's a lot of siloing that goes on. And those are things that as school safety professionals that we try to overcome, and which we are working on. That's the problem, is siloization right now. It's big. We got technology. We've had some increased funding, but siloization is, well, you know, Ryan, how much, and I'm going to end it with this on this, how much of your school district's overall budget, for example, is put towards safety and security every year? You know, typically we see in school districts, it's 1 to 2%. Okay.
Yeah, it's very
that's
low.
all it's being funded for safety and security in schools from the overall budget.
Yeah, it's very low. I was fortunate. I did apply for one of those big grants. And I'll just say this real quick. You get a grant and you get a federal grant, and you're going to be tied to that federal grant and all the documentation and hoops that they want you to go through. It doesn't allow you the opportunity to be dedicated to that grant and still do your security job. But to answer the question that was posed earlier about private security, because my superintendent is a very forward thinker, he's very pro law enforcement, and he understands that safety not only should be a physical mindset, but it should also make sure that people feel safe, teachers feel safe coming to school, parents feel safe dropping their kids off and knowing that when they pick their kids up at the end of the day, that they're not going to have some crazy story that there was, you know, some threat on campus. So for my school district, and because our superintendent will spare no expense when it comes to keeping our kids safe, we do hire at our school now. And we don't just want any private security. We want folks that have been trained, know what to look for, know how to document, because at the end of the day, if you just hire a low-level security company, I'm telling you right now, if something happens, you're going to be looking at a huge lawsuit. So you want somebody.
I'm not talking about private security companies. I'm talking about people that are private security that work directly for you, that are hired for the school district. That's what my question.
Yeah, so I have a team of folks that work underneath me, but they are actually hired by the school district. They are employees of the school district. Right. Yeah.
Right.
And so
that's what I meant. I apologize.
Right. No, and they're great. They all have law enforcement experience. We're able to pay them a very low wage because as most of when you know that when you retire in local law enforcement, you lose those benefits. So we actually offered a benefit for our retired folks to come in. But again, we have 20 plus schools, 28 schools, and when there's only like 8 of us, that just is not idea. But you take a solution like IA technology, and you can have full coverage, all your school sites, 24/7. Look, when we go on winter break, when we go on summer break, and those schools are not highly populated, the transients know that. They know that they can go to school X hotel and do really whatever they want to do, defecate, break into our classrooms because they want to charge their cell phones, they want to keep warm. And so we're constantly, when we come back, we're finding things that we have to clean up, report, because we're not being notified. We're not getting notified on a timely manner when there is something going on. And so you can look at the IA solution and say, well, it costs this. But you have to consider, and unless you've worked in this profession, I can list 10 things that are going to cost you way more money monetarily out of your pocket that's going to supersede what IREX is going to cost. And so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, no, it's a great point to bring it to, because when you're talking about artificial intelligence and security applications, it's always too much until the day it's not enough, and it always costs too much until the day it didn't cost enough. And so in terms of when we're talking about, for example, in particular IREX and the artificial intelligence, to put it into layman's terms, it's whatever happens under surveillance, IREX can trigger an alert for, whether it's a non-compliant sex offender that enters campus, a weapon that enters campus, an activity that happens on campus, a certain vehicle, and so forth. I just want to turn it to David and just with, for example, the IREX technology and the applications and the AI, especially the ethical use of the AI, how can that enhance school safety?
Well, again, I think everybody that's listening right now are involved. There's no doubt it can really enhance security. We've talked about the different methods that how it can enhance security and be that force multiplier. I believe what we need to do is really convince superintendents and school districts. That's a question. How do we get them to really support this technology in their schools? So funding will always be an issue, whether it's today, 5 years from now. That can be addressed somehow through funding. But I think it's important is how can we use this technology to convince superintendents, Board of Educations, change that mindset. And most importantly, how do we address the elephant in the room at that Board of Education meeting through community forums, what AI is, what it isn't, again, how that technology has shown and can show again the benefits. And again, the mass shootings, we talked about that again, but what about missing children with disabilities? AI can probably locate that child faster than 10 officers responding. What about the abducted child? The same thing applies. Somebody mentioned sexual offenders. Again, all these type of incidents are occurring in schools every single day. And, this advanced technology, the IA portion, once it's explained and people are educated, that's the key. There's no doubt it's going to enhance. It's going to allow quicker response by the police department. They're going to find and locate children a lot faster. But it's how do we educate schools on this technology and how it can be used? And most importantly, this technology here, the school district, the government entity that is holding this information, they collect the data. We don't. All we do is based on factors and indicators that they identify, the school district or that government agency triggers that stream, only that stream, not the entire recording for 24 hours, just that stream. When somebody shows up when a sexual offender walks into that lobby, and they also decide how long do they keep that information, who has access to that information, et cetera, et cetera. So it's all controllable. So how do we convince school districts to use this technology? I think everyone would agree. There's no doubt it's going to enhance it. But I guess that's the big question is how do we get that across? Again, they control the data, we don't. And I think once it's embraced and implemented in several school districts, it's a game changer for security and safety of schools.
So in regards to that, well, I'm going to turn to you, Ryan, right now. The use of AI within schools right now, how can it help with the visitor monitoring? Because one of the attributes what AI can do, it can trigger alerts for specific individuals if they ever come onto campus. And that could be ex-students that are obviously banned from premises, or it could be non-compliant sex offenders, or it could be even something worse. So it can trigger the alerts for these obviously nefarious threats in these individuals and vehicles as well. So how can this help with obviously visitor monitoring? Because you get into a stage right now where if school A implements this technology and school B doesn't, school B has a non-compliant sex offender go on campus and God forbid something bad happens, school B, question marks will be asked, why did you not implement this technology when it was available to you? And so this is obviously a chicken and the egg scenario a little bit, but this is kind of a societal issue what we're going through right now in terms of the adoption of it. So where do you see it, and then how can it improve, for example, the visitor management? Because like I said, it can trigger alerts for the people that are banned from premises, potentially families where the husband or wife doesn't have access to the child if they ever appear on campus. There is countless examples that we can give. So how do you think it's going to affect the visitor management, but also the future going forward?
Well, I can, you ask any of my front office managers that are responsible for checking emails, checking folks in, talking to parents, guest speakers. I mean, a life of a school campus is a revolving door. Folks are always coming and going, and you're expecting your office manager, who did not sign up to be a security guard, to manage those folks coming in and out of a campus. I mean, we had a guy just last week, transient, came off the street. Turns out he was not a threat. However, his purpose for being there, that we later found out when my security folks confronted him, is he was there because he was looking to charge his cell phone, right? And so, unfortunately, our front office staff, who was busy on all those other tasks that we're asking her to do, she did not catch this individual just sitting in the lobby, right? So imagine you take that worst case scenario, that somebody is able to push past this busy person who's concentrating on so many other things, and now you get that person and you find out that that person's on the campus, right? Now, to be able to know the life cycle of that individual, because after they've left, we may not know until maybe a week or two that there was something that happened that this individual may have done, right? But the ability to understand the complete life cycle of that individual, where they were, time-stamped, and then what direction they traveled, and then also to be able to say and to put it into the AI solution that if this person comes back on campus, because we already know that they have the propensity to do that, to get an alert, especially if that's a dangerous person. You talked about custodial issues. That is one of the biggest things that we deal with on a daily basis. Every single school has a custodial concern. And the concern is not just dad or mom who doesn't have the, it's not her day of the, or their day of the week to come visit the kid. We're 20 minutes from the border. It takes that long to grab a kid and to be able to be out of this country less than 20 minutes. To me, to have that AI technology, what people don't understand is, I mean, it's huge, right? I mean, just imagine somebody coming and taking a kid and going straight to the border. How long, and I'll ask you this, Chief, because you've, I'm sure, have dealt with those extraditions over the border. How long does it take for, you know, something like that for us to be able to recover a kid in another country like that?
Well, again, yes, that's the challenge we have here in San Diego County, is the international border. As Ryan mentioned, less than 20 minutes from downtown or most areas of the county. And it is a nightmare to be able to, even though we have good relationships, great liaison with Mexican law enforcement, it's quite a process. And unless you act immediately with that information, it's going to take a long time, and it's difficult to recover a child or a suspect back from Mexico. As I mentioned earlier on, this is a game changer. Minutes are critical to any incident anywhere, as far as where you have a life-threatening situation, a dangerous situation, and then obviously this technology can help us to reduce that amount of time and greatly improve the ability, again, to locate a missing or abducted child. I think I saw a comment just a few minutes ago. When you take a look at a lot, especially some of the large campuses, there's a lot that don't have the brick and mortar classroom. They actually have maybe trailers, for the lack of a better term, and somewhere far from the main building where they conduct classes, etc. What happens there when somebody shows up there and breaks through the classroom door there? It's gonna be a while before anyone makes a notification. You have those cameras out there as the individual is walking that shouldn't be in that area. You have the alert, the notification, that 911 call before anyone else is able to make that call. So again, it's really taking advantage of this advanced technology. And even though I think I repeated myself a couple of times, it's really getting the community of that school district, that Board of Education, educated on all the benefits and how AI works, and it doesn't really address all the perceptions regarding the use of this technology.
I'd like to obviously this point, I'd like you to kind of wrap up this point, and then we're going to go into closing notes. And also, if there's any questions from the audience, just put them in the boxes right now.
Well, what I'm going to say is I would recommend that any school district is going to adopt any kind of safety and life safety component that has any kind of AI or any life safe component, do a pilot program, do a pilot before you install it in your school, test it out at a site. Okay. Make sure that at that site that the technology works the way it's intended. It's going to do what you want as a school district. Because that's one of the biggest problems I see, is especially when we talk about video analytics, is many school districts are not using the analytics that they have purchased. They're not even aware of, when I go in and do an assessment, for example, I find a lot of the school districts do not know what type of security technology they have in place. And what I would say is, when you're testing out a new life safety component, especially with AI, test it out and make sure it's going to work. Now, in the case of IREX, knowing about the business and things, they do a lot of testing, and they do, before they, of these components, is just make sure, you're looking for a good vendor, manufacturer who's going to provide you, with that good, so IREX is one of those type of companies, but you still got to test it. And I would say that's my recommendation. I adopted a lot of AI technology before a lot of others have done it. Okay. And the biggest thing I would say to anybody, always test it before you install it. Okay. And make that agreement with your vendor that I want to test it and things. But AI is in our future, and it's going to be there. It's there. It's here now. We're going to see it when we talk about visitor management, when we talk about threat mitigation, when we talk about bait detection, or, AI is here, gunshot detection. It's all here. AI is important, but it's important for the school district and that end user to holistically deploy it. Don't just do it haphazardly, okay? But holistically. David mentioned, one of the biggest things for me as a security director was always educating our board, our administrators, our key stakeholders at the schools about what technologies that we were considering putting in. What I would say to any school district is, have a multi-hazard safe buildings team. They have different stakeholders from law enforcement, learning services, safety and security, IT, nursing, food services, custodial, secretaries, everybody, because these things have an impact on every stakeholder that we're putting in there. And when you have that buy-in from the multiple stakeholders, you're going to go far. And you're going to be able to sustain this for many, many years. And that's important, because when we buy technology, being able to sustain it and have an understanding and acceptance is probably one of the most important pieces for us to do when we're putting these technologies.
Right, and there's just been a couple of questions from the audience. So I'm going to try and circle them up and put them into all three of yours closing notes now as we close out the webinar. So a couple of the questions is IREX detecting real time. Absolutely. IREX, whatever basically happens under surveillance, IREX will trigger an alert for. It has an app, a progressive web app, download via, it doesn't matter which device, Android, Apple, iOS, it doesn't matter. So what I want to just kind of circle in now and kind of wrap up the webinar is that one of the questions is with child's, obviously, let me read the question, give me one moment. Protect the privacy of children. So to wrap up this webinar, in terms of protecting the privacy of children and also closing notes from all three of you, I'd like all three of you to talk about where you want and envisage and see the future of school safety, and also incorporate the child's privacy in that. So in quite a difficult task for all of you. So Guy's smiling, so I'm actually going to start with Guy as closing notes for you.
Okay, well, privacy for students is, if we don't consider the privacy of students, if we don't consider that when we deploy these technologies, it's going to backfire on you. So it's the best course of action, and when we do this, is when we're working with AI or any other life safety component or technology, is good policies and procedures. And look at like stakeholders like the Department of Education, CISA, different groups out there that have input into how we are maintaining that privacy for students and staff, it's everybody, is making sure that we do it holistically and we understand what we're doing. But also too, the manufacturers, one of the cool things that I like seeing, one of the challenges I had with video management systems, for example, was when I had to show teach a parent or somebody the video, I was worried about those students that were not even involved but appeared in the video, which is, you know, something you can't avoid. So what we used to do is just have that parent come down and we would make them sign a disclaimer that they, about realizing that there's other innocent people in this video and things. But one of the cool things, and I believe I saw that from IREX and some others, is the ability to black out non-involved students with, a screen over their face and things. And we're starting to see AI that's given us those tools to where we can screen the innocent out of these video management system, video files and things like that. And obviously it won't hold up in court if you have to go to court with it, but 99% of what we do with video management systems does not go to court, okay? But it could, having that ability to edit that for student privacy is important. But also too, we look at like what we put in the schools on this is everything we do, it has a huge IT impact, and also, but also too, concerning the privacy of our staff and students is most important at any given day. But what I'm saying to everybody is test these things out before you put them in. That's important. Get to know your vendor, what procedures they have, what kind of features they have that can protect student privacy and things is so important. And obviously when we look at an IREX and folks like that, they have considered that, but not every vendor or manufacturer has been doing that. And you need to be cognizant of that when you are out there looking at different technologies. You don't want to put something in that's going to get you in trouble but also violate the privacy of your students.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Guy. And yeah, absolutely. We can blur the faces of children. It was us that showed you that kind of technology. And I'm going to turn to David first, and I'm going to wrap up with you, Ryan, since you're the boots on the ground to everybody else right now. So David, if you're next.
Yeah, we're briefly, since we're about out of time again, obviously that's really critical of being able to black out the facial images, not only of students, but employees and staff and visitors who are not violating the law, they're not involved in service, they're not a problem. And that's obviously IREX can do that and does that in the current applications, internationally. It's also important, again, you have to get through that privacy issue and invasion of privacy. It's important, I believe, that school districts be inclusive and crafting some very restrictive policies and procedures, and include employees, include teachers, include community, the PTAs, so that they are comfortable on how IREX, this technology is going to be useful in balancing that invasion of privacy and, again, enhancing school security. When you have that input, then you have buy-in from the school district, you have buy-in from the employees and the community. And I believe it's a lot easier and more effective to implement at any school district.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that, David. And Ryan, if you'd just like to wrap up the webinar and give some wisdom to the audience of some of the experiences, these kind of situations every day in 2023.
Well, thanks for giving me the opportunity to be the cleanup hitter. Now, look, we have to be transparent. We have to let, like Chief Bejarano alluded to, we have to let our community know what we're doing. This is about protecting our children. That is the bottom line. If I thought there was anything different involved in this, I would not be sitting here today, having been the school director here for the last 5 years and seeing the challenges that I am faced with every day when I look at a parent and tell them that this is what we're doing to keep them safe. And I know deep in my heart, it's not enough. That's very difficult for me, not to say that I am trying to tell them something that's not true. I'm being truthful to the person, but we all know, we all get it. We can't give 100% guarantee for just about anything. When it comes to this technology, it really encompasses a lot of the technology that's already out there. If there was a mass shooting event at a school tomorrow, everybody would be running out to find the newest and the greatest thing to come up with to keep kids safe. They talk about security guards. They talk about metal detectors. We do not want our schools to look like prisons, right? We want them to be as sterile as possible, but we want to be able to keep our kids safe. We want to be able to do more and still have the opportunity at the end of the day to say that we're doing everything possible to keep our community safe, our staff safe. But you're right, we've got to have policies, and we've got to be transparent about what we're doing. And we've got to know that there are opportunities out there. And I believe in my heart that IREX is the solution.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Guy, David, and Ryan for your time, and thank you for those listening and those listening to the recording. Ryan, David, and Guy's LinkedIn is below, so if you want to reach out to them for any questions or anything like that, you can do so by clicking the link below. So thank you for everybody joining today. And again, thank you, Ryan, David, and Guy, to sharing your wisdom and sharing kind of your vision for the future in terms of School Safe Day, and we commend you for all your efforts, what you've done over the years between you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.